The invitation arrived in a gold-embossed envelope that felt heavier than paper should. My hands trembled as I slid my finger beneath the seal, already imagining the beautiful calligraphy inside. But there was no calligraphy. No elegant script spelling out my name. No, you are cordially invited. Just a single line of text on plain white cardstock. You're not welcome here. And below it, in handwriting I recognized immediately, my sister's signature. I stood in my Paris apartment, thousands of miles from my family in California, staring at words that made no sense. My sister Amelia and I had been inseparable our entire lives. We shared secrets, dreams, and the kind of bond that people envied. Or at least I thought we did. What I didn't know was that this rejection letter was only the beginning. The next 2 weeks would unravel everything I believed about my family, force me to confront uncomfortable truths about who I really was, and ultimately send me on a journey that would change my life forever. And it would all start with me posting a single video online. If this story resonates with you, please subscribe to our channel, hit that like button, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. My name is Evelyn Brooks, and for 32 years, I believed I was the lucky one. I had a loving family, a successful career as a graphic designer in San Francisco, and what I thought was a promising future with my boyfriend of 4 years. I grew up in a comfortable home in Marin County, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. My father, Richard, was a respected architect. My mother, Margaret, ran a small interior design business. My younger sister, Amelia, was just 15 months behind me, and we did everything together. We shared clothes, secrets, and the same group of friends. Teachers called us the Brooks sisters, as if we were a single entity. People couldn't mention one without mentioning the other. I always thought that closeness was a blessing, but looking back, I realize it was the first sign of something much more complicated. Amelia had a way of making everything look effortless. She was naturally charming, the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately drew everyone's attention. I was quieter, more observant, and I often found myself standing in her shadow. But I didn't mind. I loved my sister, and I convinced myself that we balanced each other out. She was the sparkle, and I was the steady flame. I worked hard to build my career. Late nights at my drafting table, endless revisions on client projects, networking events that drained my social battery. Every promotion I earned, every award I received, I celebrated with Amelia. I wanted her to be proud of me, and she always seemed to be. She'd post about my achievements on social media, brag about me to her friends, and tell me how happy she was that I was succeeding. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. It started with small things. Amelia began borrowing money and forgetting to pay it back. She'd show up at my apartment with her laundry when her machine broke, taking up my weekend time. She'd ask me to help with her work projects at the last minute, and I always said yes. I told myself this was what sisters did. We supported each other. I didn't keep score because I believed love wasn't transactional. What I didn't notice was that the score was being kept. Just not by me. My boyfriend at the time, Marcus, was the first person to point it out. "When was the last time Amelia helped you with anything?" he asked one night after I'd spent the entire evening editing her presentation. I shrugged. "She's busy. She has different priorities." "Different priorities," Marcus repeated, his voice flat. "Or you're her priority when she needs something, and she's nobody's priority when you do." I defended her immediately. I told him he didn't understand our bond. I said family was complicated, and he had no right to judge. But even as I spoke, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that maybe he had a point. 3 months before everything fell apart, I received a promotion I'd been working toward for years. Creative director at one of the top design firms in San Francisco. It was the kind of recognition that changed careers. I called my family immediately. My father congratulated me warmly. My mother said she was proud. Amelia's call went to voicemail. I texted her the news. She replied hours later. "That's amazing. So happy for you. Can't talk now, in a meeting. Love you." When we finally connected 2 days later, she spent an hour telling me about her new boyfriend, Derek, and how she was certain he was the one. She showed me photos of the ring she'd been hinting at. I listened. I asked questions. I celebrated her relationship. But when I tried to share details about my new role, she glanced at her phone and said she had to run. That was the pattern I'd been living in my whole life. I just couldn't see it. A month later, I got the call from my mother. She said they were hosting a small dinner to celebrate Amelia and Derek's engagement, and of course I was invited. Dress nicely, my mother said. We're making it special. When I arrived at the house that Friday evening, I noticed the decorations first. White flowers everywhere. Soft candlelight. Beautiful table settings. Then I saw the photographer. Something felt wrong. Engagement dinners don't have professional photographers. I walked into the living room and found my entire extended family gathered. Aunts, uncles, cousins, even my grandmother, who rarely traveled anymore. Everyone was dressed in formal attire. Amelia was standing in the center of the room, wearing a white dress that looked suspiciously like a wedding gown. Her friend group was there too. Her sorority sisters. Her work colleagues. And then I noticed something that made my heart stop. None of my friends were there. Nobody from my life.
Just me.
My mother approached me with a champagne flute. Surprise! We wanted to announce the wedding date tonight. Isn't this wonderful? I looked around the room. Everyone was beaming. Amelia was laughing. My father was clinking a glass for attention. But I couldn't see any of the details clearly anymore. A photographer moved through the crowd, capturing moments. I watched him snap photos of Amelia and her friends. I watched him catch my parents making a toast. I watched him angle his camera toward me, then lower it without taking a shot. I was invisible. Later that evening, after the announcement, I helped clean up. It was a habit I'd developed since childhood. When I was anxious, I did useful things. My mother thanked me for helping and said they had important news to share privately. My father and Amelia joined us in the kitchen. We've decided to have the wedding in Napa Valley, my mother said. It's going to be small. Just family and close friends. I nodded. Sounds beautiful. When is it? 6 weeks from now, Amelia said. 6 weeks. I blinked. That's really soon. Are you sure you'll be able to plan everything in time? We've been planning, my mother said smoothly. We just didn't want to stress you out with all the details. Something about the way she said it made my stomach clench. That's sweet, I said slowly. But I'd love to help. I could work on the invitations, or maybe the place settings dash. Amelia interrupted me. Actually, we were thinking you might want to take a trip instead. A trip? My mother nodded. You've been working so hard, Evelyn. All those late nights and deadlines. We thought you deserved a break. And since the wedding will be small, we didn't want to take away from your relaxation time. My father was looking at the floor. Amelia was examining her engagement ring. You're saying you don't want me at the wedding, I said. We're saying, my mother clarified, that we want you to have the opportunity to do something for yourself. For once. I felt my eyes start to burn. You're uninviting me. From my own sister's wedding. It's not that dramatic, Amelia said, rolling her eyes. It's just that we have to keep numbers down and dash. Your sorority sisters were here tonight, I said, my voice rising. Your work friends. The photographer didn't even bother taking a picture of me. Am I the only person in this room who can see what's happening? I think you need to calm down, my father said, finally looking at me. That made me stop. My father had never been unkind to me. He was quiet, steady, and in many ways, the person I felt closest to in our family. And now he was telling me to calm down. Did you know about this? I asked him. He didn't answer. He just looked away again. I left the house without saying goodbye. The next morning, I called Amelia. She didn't answer. I called my mother. She sent me to voicemail. I sent a group message to my family. I need to understand what happened last night. Please call me. 2 hours later, my mother replied, We love you, Evelyn. But we've made our decision. The wedding is the weekend of May 15th. We think you should plan something special for yourself that weekend. May 15th. That was exactly when I had a major project deadline. I was supposed to be presenting to our biggest client that week. I had even told my family about it. I had mentioned that work was extremely busy in May. They had planned the wedding for the exact weekend I couldn't leave work. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then very slowly, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger. It was much colder than that. It was understanding. I opened my calendar and looked at the following months. I had no vacations planned. I had never taken a real vacation in my entire adult life. Every trip I'd taken was a family obligation or a work trip. I thought about all those times I'd canceled plans with friends because Amelia needed something. All those weekends I spent helping my mother organize events. All those loans I gave that never got repaid. I was the convenience, the safety net, the person who made everyone else's life easier. And now they were making it clear. I wasn't wanted at the celebration. I was only wanted when there was a problem to solve. I closed my calendar and opened a different browser tab. I had never been to Europe. I had always dreamed of going to Paris. I'd taken French in high school and dreamed about sitting in a cafe along the Seine, sketchbook in hand, drawing the beauty of a city that had inspired generations of artists. I had never done it because there was always someone who needed me, always a family obligation, always a project I couldn't leave. But now I was being told to take a trip, and I knew exactly where I was going. I bought the plane ticket that evening, nonstop from San Francisco to Paris Charles de Gaulle, departing May 12th, returning May 22nd. I would be gone for my sister's wedding. I would be in Paris. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anyone except my boss, who approved my request with disbelief, because I had never taken more than 3 days off in 6 years. "What's the occasion?" he asked. "I'm being uninvited from a wedding," I said. "And I decided to go somewhere I actually want to be." He stared at me for a moment, then smiled. "Good for you." The 2 weeks leading up to my departure were strange. My family didn't call me. I didn't call them. I busied myself with work, preparing for the presentation that was now scheduled for the week after my return. Marcus and I had been growing distant. He didn't understand why I wasn't fighting harder to attend the wedding. He thought I was being childish. "You should be there," he said. "It's your sister's wedding. She doesn't want me there. She's just stressed. Weddings are complicated." "I'm her sister," I said. "Would you uninvite your brother to our wedding?" He didn't answer. He just shook his head and left the room. Marcus and I broke up 3 days before I left for Paris. It was surprisingly painless. He said we wanted different things. I said I thought he was right. The truth was that I didn't have the energy to fight for a relationship that had always felt one-sided. I had spent years trying to be enough for people who never seemed satisfied with what I gave. I was done. On May 12th, I boarded a plane for France with a single carry-on bag and my sketchbook. No checked luggage. No elaborate plans. Just 10 days in a city I'd always wanted to see. The flight was long, but I didn't sleep. I watched movies I'd never had time to see and ate airplane food without caring about the calories. I was free. I landed in Paris at 7:30 a.m., exhausted and exhilarated. The first thing I did was walk to the nearest cafe and order a café crème and a croissant. The croissant was flaky and buttery and absolutely perfect. The coffee was rich and smooth. I sat at a tiny table on the sidewalk and watched Paris wake up. People passed by on their morning commutes. Bicycles clattered over cobblestones. A man walked by with baguettes tucked under his arm. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt completely present. I pulled out my sketchbook and started drawing. The cafe. The people. The buildings with their ornate iron balconies and tall windows. I sketched for 4 hours straight. When I finally looked up, the sun was high in the sky, and my hands were covered in graphite. I felt alive. Over the next several days, I explored Paris like a detective investigating a beautiful mystery. The Louvre, the Musée d'Orsay, the Pompidou Center. I stood in front of paintings I'd only seen in textbooks and wept from the beauty of them. I climbed the Eiffel Tower and watched the sun set over the city. I walked through the Luxembourg Gardens and took photos of every flower. I ate pain au chocolate every morning and didn't care about the calories. And I sketched. Page after page of sketches. Buildings, people, trees, cafes. My sketchbook filled faster than I'd ever imagined. On the 3rd day, I visited Montmartre. I walked up the hill to Sacré-Cœur Basilica and stood at the top of the steps, looking down at the city spread before me like a living painting. That's when I met Giselle. She was an older woman, maybe 70, sitting on a bench near the church. She was sketching too. Her hands moved with practiced ease, capturing the view with quick, confident strokes. She noticed me watching and smiled. In French, she asked if I drew. I replied in halting French that I did, but badly compared to her. She laughed and invited me to sit with her. We spent the next hour drawing together, communicating in a mix of my terrible French and her limited English. She was a retired art teacher, she explained. She had lived in Paris her entire life and had never grown tired of its beauty. "Where are you from?" she asked. "California," I said. "San Francisco." "You are on vacation?" "Yes," I said. "I'm escaping a wedding." She raised an eyebrow. "A wedding? You are running away." I laughed. I was uninvited. So I decided to come here instead. Giselle looked at me for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small sketchbook, the size of a passport. "This is for you," she said. "A gift." I tried to refuse, but she insisted. "You have an artist's eye," she said. "I can tell. You see things that other people don't see. That's why you're here, even if you don't know it yet." I took the sketchbook, overwhelmed by her kindness. "Thank you. Thank you so much." "Promise me something," she said. "Draw every day, even when you're sad, even when you're tired. Draw what you see, and someday you'll understand what you were looking for." I promised. I spent the rest of my time in Paris drawing in that small sketchbook. I filled it with images of everything I saw. The way light fell on a cobblestone street. The curve of a bridge over the Seine. The expression on a barista's face as she served coffee. And every page, I wrote a single line about what I was feeling. May 15th came and went. I barely noticed. In Paris, surrounded by beauty and new experiences, I had almost forgotten that back home, my sister was getting married without me. Almost. On May 16th, I woke up with a strange feeling. I checked my phone just in case. No messages from my family. I decided to do something I'd never done before. I opened my phone's camera and recorded a video. "Bonjour," I said, laughing at my own accent. "I'm in Paris. It's my 5th day here." I turned the camera around to show the view from my hotel window. The rooftops of the Marais district stretched out before me, all gray slate and chimneys and tiny dormer windows. "The thing is," I continued, turning the camera back to myself, "I'm supposed to be at my sister's wedding today. But I wasn't invited. So I came to France instead." I paused. I hadn't planned what I was going to say. I was just talking, letting the words come. My whole life, I thought I was the lucky one. I thought my family was close and supportive and loving. But then they uninvited me from my own sister's wedding without even telling me. They planned it for a weekend. They knew I was working. They made it clear I wasn't wanted. I was crying now, but I kept going. Being here has been the most beautiful experience of my life. I've been drawing every day. I met a woman named Giselle who gave me the sketchbook and told me to draw what I see. And I think I'm starting to understand something important. I held up the sketchbook. It was almost full. I don't need to be wanted by people who don't see me. I don't need to prove my worth to anyone. I am already enough. I always was. I ended the video and uploaded it to a small TikTok account I'd started years ago and never used. I didn't have any followers. I didn't expect anyone to see it. The next morning I had 50,000 views. By noon I had 100,000. By evening I had 300,000. And then the comments started coming in. So beautiful. I needed to hear this. This happened to me too. Going through the exact same thing right now. Thank you for sharing. You're so brave. I wish I could be as strong as you. I scrolled through the comments for hours. People shared their own stories of being excluded, undervalued, taken for granted. People thanked me for giving them the courage to set boundaries. People told me I'd inspired them to take their own trip, pursue their own dream, stop waiting for approval. I had never felt so seen. The video kept growing. By the time I returned to the United States on May 22nd, it had 2 million views. I didn't know what to do with that. I was just a graphic designer from San Francisco who'd been uninvited from a wedding and decided to go to Paris instead. But something had shifted. The part of me that always sought validation from my family was gone. In its place was a quiet certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be. When I landed in San Francisco, I turned on my phone to a barrage of notifications. My mother had called 7 times. My father had called 3 times. Amelia had sent text messages that I couldn't bring myself to read. I called my father first. "Evelyn," he said, his voice heavy. "We need to talk." "About what?"
"About the video.
"Your mother saw it." "We all saw it." "I figured you would." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I didn't know that's how you felt." "How I felt?" "Dad, you were there. You heard it. You knew what was happening." "I knew it was wrong," he said. "I knew it was cruel. But your mother and Amelia, they're difficult to stand up to." "I've been standing up to them my whole life," I said. "I just didn't have the words for it." He was silent for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I'm sorry I let them treat you that way. I'm sorry I didn't say anything." I took a shaky breath. "I forgive you," I said. "But things are different now. I'm different now." "I know," he said. "I can see that." Amelia's texts were more complicated. "I can't believe you did that. Everyone saw it. Everyone knows about the wedding. You made me look like such a terrible person. Why would you do this to me?" I sent back a single message. "Why didn't you invite me?" She didn't reply. The next week was strange. My video continued to grow. 4 million views. 6 million. 10 million. I couldn't keep up with the notifications. Interview requests started rolling in. News outlets wanted to do pieces on the uninvited sister. I was offered book deals and speaking engagements and all kinds of attention I'd never sought. But I turned most of it down. The story had gotten out and that was enough. I didn't need to be a cautionary tale or an inspiration. I just needed to be myself. My mother called at the end of the week. She was crying. "Evelyn, please. Can we just forget all of this? Can we be a family again?" "I'm not sure what that means," I said. "What does family mean to you?" "It means loving each other, supporting each other." "Does it mean not uninviting someone from a wedding without an explanation?" "I made a mistake," she said. "We all made mistakes. Please just forgive us." "Forgiveness isn't automatic," I said. "It's not a switch you turn on when you realize you've been caught. It's something that happens over time when people show they've changed." I know. We'll do better. I promise." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I had spent my whole life believing what people told me, and I had learned the hard way that words were cheap. "I need time," I said. "Time to figure out what I actually want." "Is that what you want?" "Time." "What I want," I said slowly, "is to be valued for who I am, not what I can do for you. I want to be seen and heard and respected. I want to stop being the convenience." My mother was silent. "I'm not asking you to fix everything overnight," I continued. "But I'm also not going to pretend everything is fine when it's not." That's what I always did. I pretended everything was fine so everyone else could be comfortable. "I'm done pretending." "Okay," my mother said quietly. "Okay." Weeks passed. My video views kept climbing, but I stopped paying attention. I went back to work, threw myself into my projects with renewed energy, and started saying no to things I didn't want to do. I said no to unnecessary overtime. I said no to tasks that weren't my responsibility. I said no to people who assumed I would always be available. And slowly, a strange thing happened. The clients who had been taking me for granted started showing more respect. My colleagues began seeing me differently. The quality of my work improved because I wasn't exhausted all the time. I heard through my father that Amelia was struggling. Her marriage was already in trouble. Derek had watched the video and was upset that she hadn't invited me. He couldn't understand why she'd excluded her own sister from the wedding. But that wasn't my problem to solve. The biggest change came from inside me. I spent my evenings sketching, filling new notebooks with drawings of whatever caught my attention. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since college. I began to notice small beautiful things everywhere. One evening in early July, I received an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Sophie, who ran a small art gallery in the Marais district of Paris. She had seen my video and remembered me visiting the gallery during my trip. "I was struck by your drawings," she wrote. "Giselle mentioned them to me. She said you have a natural gift. I'd be honored to feature your work in a small exhibition this fall if you're interested." I stared at the email in disbelief. Me? An exhibition? In Paris? I replied immediately. I would be honored. The exhibition opened on a crisp October evening at a tiny gallery on a street so narrow you'd miss it if you blinked. The walls were lined with my sketches, framed in simple black wood. They sold for prices I would never have dreamed of charging. Giselle was there, her eyes bright with pride. Sophie was there, orchestrating the event with quiet efficiency. People I'd never met bought my art and told me it made them feel something. I stood at the back of the gallery and cried. Not from sadness, but from a deep, profound recognition that I had finally found my place in the world. Amelia was not there. My mother was not there. My father sent a beautiful email, full of pride and regret, explaining that it was difficult to travel, but he was thinking of me. I understood. Things were complicated. They would probably always be complicated. But I was no longer defined by my family's limitations. I was defined by what I chose to create, and by the path I was building for myself. When the exhibition ended, I flew home to San Francisco with a new sense of purpose. I had been offered a permanent position at the Paris Gallery, helping to curate and manage exhibitions. It wasn't exactly what I'd studied in school, but it felt right. And, in a way that surprised me, it also felt like coming home. I packed my apartment, donated half my possessions to a local charity, and prepared to move across the ocean. My life was becoming something unrecognizable from the one I'd been living just months earlier. I had been uninvited from my sister's wedding, and it had been the greatest gift anyone had ever given me. In Paris, I found a small apartment on the Rue de Sévigné, not far from where I'd first met Giselle. I decorated it with mismatched furniture and hung my favorite sketches on the walls. I bought fresh flowers every week and learned to make croissants from scratch. And every morning, I sat at my tiny kitchen table, drinking coffee and sketching whatever was outside my window. When I wasn't working at the gallery, I walked the streets of Paris like I was discovering them for the first time. I kept a photo journal, filming snippets of my daily life and occasionally posting them online. The platform where my original video had gone viral was different now. My account had grown into something meaningful. People followed my journey, shared their own stories, and found courage in the fact that I'd chosen myself. But I was careful not to let it define me. The internet was a strange place, full of both kindness and cruelty. I learned to protect my peace, to engage only when I felt inspired, and to disconnect when I needed to. During one of my walks in the 6th arrondissement, I met a woman named Noémie. She was a writer, working on a novel about a woman who had been uninvited from her own family's story and had to write herself a new one. "Funny," I said. "I know exactly how that feels." She smiled. "I thought you might. I read your story." "I'm not sure I'd call it a story," I said. "It was just my life." "Every life is a story," Noémie said. "The question is who gets to tell it." We became friends. She read my journals, the ones I'd been keeping since that first trip to Paris. She told me I should publish them. "No one wants to read my personal ramblings," I said. "You'd be surprised," she said. "People want to know they're not alone. People want to see the messy, complicated truth of how someone finds themselves." I thought about Giselle, the woman who had given me the sketchbook and told me to draw every day. She'd passed away the previous spring. Before she died, she had sent me a letter. "Draw what you see," she'd written. "Someday you'll understand what you were looking for." I finally understood. I had been looking for myself, for the woman who existed outside of her family's expectations, for the artist who had always been there but had never been allowed to fully emerge. I had been looking for permission to be who I already was. The book came out 2 years later. It was a small volume, published by a small press, but it found its way into the hands of people who needed it. At the launch party in Paris, my father showed up. He had flown across the ocean to see me, and he was crying before he even said a word. "I read the book," he said. All of it. I know what I did. I know what I let happen. Dad, it's okay. It's not okay. It's not. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not because of the book or the exhibition or any of that. I'm proud of who you became when you stopped waiting for us to see you. I hugged him, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Love and hurt, gratitude and grief. The past would always be there, but it no longer defined me. Amelia and I don't talk much. We send birthday and Christmas cards. We're civil. But the relationship we once had, the easy intimacy of sisters who shared everything, is gone. I don't mourn it the way I used to. I've made peace with the distance. It's not about punishment or anger. It's simply about protecting the life I've built. My mother and I have started emailing each other. It's cautious, but there's a new honesty in her words. She's apologized more times than I can count. I've told her that forgiveness is a process, not a one-time event. One morning, about 3 years after everything changed, I was walking through the Luxembourg Gardens with Noemi. We were talking about her new book and my upcoming exhibition. You know what I've learned? I said. What? Being uninvited was the best thing that ever happened to me. She laughed. That's quite a statement. I mean it. If I'd been at that wedding, I would have stayed exactly where I was. I would have kept being the person everyone expected me to be. I would have never found this. I gestured around us. The gardens were beautiful in the morning light. The trees were green, the flowers were blooming, and the air was filled with the sound of children laughing. I was so afraid of being rejected that I never noticed I'd already been accepted by the world. I said, just not the one I thought I wanted to belong to. Noemi nodded. That's what I love about your story. It's not about revenge. It's about waking up. We sat on a bench and watched the people pass by. I pulled out my sketchbook and started drawing again. It was second nature now. The sketchbook Giselle gave me is still on my shelf, worn and loved. I look at it sometimes and remember that woman who believed in me before I believed in myself. She told me to draw what I saw, and I did. And somewhere along the way, I started seeing myself clearly for the first time. I saw a woman who had always been enough, even when everyone else made her feel like she wasn't. I saw a woman who had found her voice in a foreign country, speaking a language she barely knew. I saw a woman who had turned the greatest rejection of her life into the most beautiful invitation she could have ever received. An invitation to herself. The wedding I wasn't invited to didn't matter anymore. The family that excluded me didn't define my worth. The life I was supposed to be living had disappeared, replaced by something far richer and more authentic. I had gone to Paris with nothing but a carry-on bag and a broken heart. And I had found everything. Or maybe I'd just found what had been there all along, buried under years of trying to be what everyone else needed me to be. I'm not sure I'll ever get married. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. It doesn't matter the way it used to. What matters is that I know who I am. I know what I'm worth. And I know that being uninvited from someone else's story is not the tragedy I once believed it was. The tragedy was almost staying. The miracle was leaving. I sat in the Luxembourg Gardens with my sketchbook and my friend, watching the sun climb higher over Paris, and I smiled. I smiled because I was home. Not because I'd found a place, but because I'd finally stopped being afraid to be exactly who I was. I smiled because I was free, and I had never, ever been happier. That video I posted that day in Paris, it was never about revenge. It was never about shaming my family. It was about a woman who had finally realized she didn't need anyone's permission to live her own life. And that's a fairy tale. Not the kind with princes and castles and happily ever afters in the traditional sense. The kind where you save yourself. The kind where you realize the only person you needed to impress was already standing in the mirror. The kind where being uninvited was the best thing that ever happened. And if that's not a story worth telling, I don't know what is.